everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're working on our dually, and our little project today is we are going to attempt to modify, if required, and install a second-gen rear sway bar onto our third-gen truck. Why I would like to do that, I mean, just for driving around, I don't think it really needs it, but what I learned with this Class C RV, it's a Ford, it was pretty wild in crosswinds. And I was in the junkyard one day, and I found an E450 cube van, which is basically the same underneath as this, except a little more heavy duty. It had maybe another, I think 1,500 or 2,000 pounds on its gross weight than this 350 has. But it had a big rear sway bar on the back of it. So I grabbed that, and I had to make a couple of brackets of that, and I put it underneath the back of this thing, and man, let me tell you, did it settle it down in the crosswinds. Also at the same time, it's hard to see, but I found a minibus in the junkyard that had this huge aftermarket front sway bar. I put that in it too, and this thing is like a big go-kart now. So in my visions of grandeur, I would like to, somewhere down the line, maybe put a big slide-in camper in this thing. Because, I mean, it's got the 8-foot box and the dualies. It's a 1-ton truck. It can handle pretty much any camper that you could throw at it. And I don't see, you know, on YouTube, we've all seen the 4th and 5th gen heavy-duty Rams breaking in half with the slide-in campers. But I've never really seen a 3rd gen break in half, even rotten Canadian ones. So, and I wouldn't go quite overboard. I mean, these guys had, I think a 12-foot camper in their 8-foot box, and it was hanging way out, and they had an extension hitch on it, and they were towing a great big trailer, and the poor frame of the truck just had so much leverage applied to it. And this is where they all break, right here, where the front mount of the box is. That's where those frames break. And on the 4th and 5th gen truck, it's a little different. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the frame, so you've got a weld that goes all the way down, and when it's trying to flex this way, that becomes a stress point, and they collapse there. The frame of the truck is made to twist like corner to corner. It's got, you know, it's got corner to corner twist kind of built into it, but it doesn't really have like porpoise twist built into it. That just breaks them. Anyway, enough of that. This here is a rear sway bar from a 2nd gen. They come in 2 flavors, 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. And what I seem to have found the difference is the 4-wheel drive is a tiny bit thicker than the 2-wheel drive one. This is a 2-wheel drive one, which was the first one that I could find and source locally. Now, let's have a look at our truck. To my knowledge, I have never seen a 3rd gen truck with a rear sway bar. But you can see the holes to mount it are there in the bottom of the shock mounts. They are very similar to the ones on a 2nd gen. Now, the 2nd gen that I pulled that off, it was a 2500 2-wheel drive. It would be a Dana 70, I guess, in the back. This AAM 11.5 is substantially larger than that Dana. But anyway, we're going to see what we can do to make this thing work. Our biggest problem is that this bar is too narrow to fit our truck. These here, the bushings are basically on, I've knocked these as far apart as they'll go. So it says 29.5 now, but they're really on 29-inch centers. And our truck, they're on like 32-inch centers. So I'm not sure this is going to work. We're going to go over to the press and see if we can start straightening out some of these curves, which will start making the bar a little bit wider. And we'll see if we can get it to the point where it will fit. It'll eventually get to the point where we flatten these out so much this will start hitting the rear end cover. As it is, even though if I am successful in widening it, anytime in the future we go to service the rear end, we'll have to drop the bar to get the cover off. But I mean, it's 4 bolts, and I'll make sure they're any seized up and that they'll come off. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the 20-ton press and see if we can start opening these up a little bit. It's okay, you can bend these. I've mucked around with a lot of sway bars in my day, making ones from different cars fit other cars. It's okay, you can do it, you won't hurt them. The only thing you can't really mess with is these parts here. The part where the twisting actually happens. Anything that is not 90 degrees to the center line of the car, you can monkey with. You could bend it here, you could bend it here, you could bend it here. You can open and close these radiuses. It won't hurt it at all. So you just get in the press like that, and you can see there, we're bending it. So I bend it a little bit. I'll flip it around now and bend this side the same amount, and we'll see if we've accomplished anything. Now you can see, now that we've opened it up, now these two are kind of pointing back. So we have to flatten out these radiuses a little bit next. Okay, we did it. You can see now it's 32 inches to where the bushing sits, center to center, just like it needs to be. Hopefully we've still got enough here to reach around the rear end. And then what we will probably have to do when we put the thing back up in the truck is just straighten these arms out. Easy enough to do on the press. We can even use some heat to help straighten these out because it's just a straight arm. It doesn't do anything. So what I'm going to do now, I've got some new bushings on order, but we're just going to slap it together with the old bushings and hang it from the rear end and see what it looks like. These little plates with the captive bolts go down in there, and as you can see, they off the second gen truck, but they fit the third gen axle perfectly. Yeah, can we see the bottom of it? Oh, there they are. There's the stud sticking down. So, well, we'll see what happens. Well, you can see, there it is. It fits. And it even has some clearance. I'm pretty sure I could still get the cover off the rear end. So what we got to make sure of now is that when the suspension gets fully compressed, like the axle all the way up, because the ends of the sway bar, because of the links, are going to stay the same distance from the frame rail. So if you can imagine, as the axle comes up, those things will end up going like that, and we have to make sure we can reach full suspension compression before that bar hits the cover. I won't be putting a Mag High-Tech cover on this rear end anytime soon. There's no room for that. In order to use one of those, we'd have to just completely make a custom sway bar or scrounge around in the junkyard for something that fit a little closer. But this one is fine. We also have to make sure that when it goes the other way, if the suspension was in droop, that it's not going to touch this. The other thing that I found out is that, you see here I was talking about maybe having to straighten this because I made the bar wider. Well, it seems now, after checking, that this entire frame is 3 inches wider than a second gen frame, because the eye, now that I've widened out the bar, the eye is directly underneath the center of this rail. So we should be able to make this work, although I have to see which way the end link goes in. Well, we'll figure it out. And it doesn't come anywhere near the fuel tank. You can see that. So it's all good. This suspension has about 6 inches of travel. And I've already checked. This thing would have to go 8 inches before it hit the rear end. And if when we put it in, we aim it up slightly a little bit like that, that'll buy us even more space. So all in all, this is looking pretty darn good. So I'll pull this thing back out of here, get it cleaned up and painted, and once our new bushings come in, we'll get it back attached to the frame, and then we'll see what we've got to do about the end links and the hangers. See, these are the hangers from the second gen. They just use this and that. The difference being that on a second gen, it still uses a C-channel frame. So this is all wide open, and this truck has a boxed frame. But I'm not too concerned about that. We will find a way to make this work. I've got a couple of ideas already. So we can see here the end link fits in from the inboard side and comes up. Of course, this is a two-wheel drive bar. The four-wheel drive one has a lot longer end links, right? Because of the difference in ground clearance. This was, man, was this ever fun to get off. I met a really nice guy that helped me out. He was parting out a truck, and but his driveway was on kind of a hill, and there was no engine and transmission in it. He had it kind of blocked up, so I couldn't jack it up, and it was a two-wheel drive truck, and it had running boards on it. Wow, it was a lot of crawling in and out underneath that thing, but hey, we did it. So here's something I had to do. I had to drill 2 new holes for this bolt plate because I had to kind of pivot the bar a little bit. Even though there's 2 different sets of holes in these brackets, from side to side, they just were not lining up for this 2-wheel drive bar. Like I said, I didn't really look at a 4-wheel drive setup on a second gen, so I have no idea if it may be a little bit different. But it doesn't matter. We drilled 2 holes, so we've got this thing squirreled away. The only thing with pivoting it moves this one forward a little bit, which did cut down a little bit more on our space here. But I've checked it out. It's still all good. We've got clearance. So the suspension at maximum compression or maximum jounce, nothing is going to hit anything. So that's all good. What I'm going to do now, I'm sort of stuck waiting for parts. I ordered a pair of the longer 4-wheel drive end links, and they're not going to be here yet for a couple of days. So in the meantime, there's other stuff we could do. I'm going to get all the parts that I do have cleaned up and painted. We'll clean up this rear end cover, get it painted. And then once the end links show up, I'll still have to wait until the truck has some weight on the back of it, so I know I get the anchors and everything all in the right place. This job keeps getting more interesting. When I have the sway bar mocked onto the axle, the eye on the end of it is pretty much pointing straight down from my finger. But what we see here is, here, let me hold this. So kind of in the 3 dimensions of space, the top eye of the sway bar link, I think should be kind of about there. But look, just an inch in front of that. What do we have? A little relief in the side of the fuel tank. Right where that bolt would be. So I guess that's how we'll mount it. We'll mount it a little forward. The links might be pointing back a little bit, but they'll still work just fine. And yeah, so that's how we'll do that. Very interesting. So this baby is all set up for a rear sway bar, yet they never, ever offered it. I don't know why. Maybe around the same time. I know at some point Sterling was selling rebranded Dodge trucks in kind of heavier configurations than this, and possibly the Sterling truck had a rear sway bar. I'm going to see if I can find that out. I don't even know what years that the Sterling trucks were made out of Dodges. Seems to me it was around this time. So I'm going to go do a little reading now and see what I find out. I did a bit of reading and found that the only 3rd gen Rams I could find that had a rear sway bar, so there were some, were the 08 and 09 Ram 4500 and 5500 cabin chassis. On those, things are a little bit different back here, but it did have a rear sway bar. That'll be one heck of a big bar. I'll keep my eyes peeled for one of those, I guess. But for now, like a normal pickup, I still can't find any evidence of any 3rd gen pickup ever having a rear sway bar. Except, of course, the SRT 10 Viper trucks. I'm sure they had a rear sway bar, but they were 1500s, kind of apples and oranges to these babies. Here we go. Our sway bar links have arrived. You can see the difference between the two-wheel drive ones and the four-wheel drive. That's the difference in ride height between the two. I just got the absolute cheapest ones I could find and kind of balanced that against what we get here first, because we're still not 100% sure that this is going to work. Now, I did do some kind of reading and research and sleuthing around, and I found that, I think I mentioned it already, the SRT Rams, the ones with the Viper engines, they came with a rear sway bar. And that is the only normal light-duty third-gen trucks I could find that came with a rear sway bar. I did find, however, that once they started with the Ram 4500 and 5500, they all have a rear sway bar. And I'm guessing that that would be more of a bolt-in for these trucks, because it would already be the right width and still have the proper large U to fit around the AAM axle. But anyway, like for what we've got tied up in this as an experiment, we're going to go with it. So we're going to go underneath there, hang the bar from the axle, and see where the heck these things are going to end up. I put new bushings on it too. Nowadays, even the cheapest sway bar bushings that you buy, they're all polyurethane. It must be cheaper than rubber or something. I don't know, because they're all made out of poly now. Oh, there it is. Look, it's snazzy. Now we'll see where this ends up. I just got this kind of all mocked together. You can see the little dimple in the side of the fuel tank. That's where the bolt should end up. So we're pretty good. I mean, the bar is aiming up now, but the truck will squash down at least another couple of inches once we put the box and the spare tire and all our accessories and stuff in the back. So I'm not too worried about that. And the only other thing, you can see that the link kind of angles to the front a little bit. And, you know, in a perfect world, you want it completely perpendicular. But not much we can do about that. We could, if I hadn't had to take so much out of the hoop out of it, I could move it up to this hole here and drill a new pair of holes on the other side, and that would get our link a lot closer to upright. But bearing in mind that if I could ever get my hands on a bar from a 4500 or 5500, it'll probably all just go together slick as can be. So we are going to mount our brackets to the frame where it looks like they're supposed to be. I'm going to drill and tap 2 holes in the bottom of the rail on each side, and that should do it. I've got the bracket bolted to the frame. I drilled and tapped a pair of 3/8 course holes in the bottom of the rail and bolted that up so that it coincided with that dimple in the tank for bolt clearance. That's where that needs to be. Everything's on. Like I said before, the bar aims up, but once we got her loaded down, this suspension is pretty much at maximum jounce right now because there's just no weight on it. It should be okay. If not, there's stuff we can do. We can use longer bolts and put a block in here. We could make the arms longer. There's all kinds of stuff we could do, but for now, we're just going to get it together and see what it looks like. So I'll go over to the other side. I have to measure this distance in here, put the other bracket on in the same place, and then we can tighten everything up. And there's our sway bar installed. I've left everything loose until I get it outside and get the weight on the back of it, and we'll see where everything sits and decide if we want to make any little adjustments to it. But we can't worry about that right now. Yeah, it's looking pretty good under there now, isn't it? What I had to do, I made this spacer that goes in between this bracket and the frame that in effect makes the sway bar link 2.5 inches longer, which gets us our angle down here. We're as close to 90 degrees as we can get it, which is great. The only problem on this side is because I moved this down, it gets this bolt away from the little dimple in the fuel tank. I do have about, let me see here, 3/8 of an inch of clearance behind it. I had to really find the perfect length bolt and put just a nut on the back side of it, but it's good. We'll keep an eye on it, and as time goes on, I may fiddle about with it some more. I may just buy another set of links and lengthen them 2.5 inches and put these brackets back up here where they originally were, so everything goes together the proper way. But for now, I didn't want to start cutting and welding parts when I could just easily make a little spacer. You can see here we've got it's just in the right place. We've got lots of clearance so the suspension can articulate and the bar isn't going to hit anything. So I think we've got this figured out. Before I declare the back end of this buttoned up, I don't like this. I don't like that we've extended this bracket. It is a little flimsy. I don't like that this bolt is so close to the fuel tank when there's a nice dimple there for clearance. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all of this stuff. I'm going to bolt the bracket back to the frame like it should be. And I'm going to extend the sway bar links. I'm just going to, well, I'll show you what we're going to do. What I did was, our new 4-wheel drive sway bar link that we had, I cut the eye off right at the top of the shaft. And then our old 2-wheel drive ones that we had, I cut it there and welded it on. Then once it cools off, I'll throw a coat of paint on it and we'll push the bushings back in, and then it can just go back together as it was. I've put a bit of a point on both our pieces here so we can get a good amount of weld in there. And I've got it clamped into a little piece of angle iron to keep everything straight. So we'll weld it up, clean it up, and then once they cool down, we can give them a coat of paint and put the bushings back in. Now we can push the bushings back in. Just put a little lube on them and give them a push on the press, and they go right in. That's pretty good. It all goes together nice. The bar is kind of aiming up a little bit. We need it to be like that because of how much we had to flatten out the back of it so it doesn't hit the cover when the suspension compresses. I want lots of room there. Like I've stated before, the optimum angle for the bar and the link to operate at is 90 degrees. So theoretically, this link should be pointing back that way a little bit. But it's close enough to 90 degrees that it won't adversely affect it too much, especially with polyurethane bushings in it. Why you want this perfectly 90 degrees here is so that all movement of this goes to twisting or deflecting the bar. As this gets opened up, when it's trying to do this, it actually starts wanting to push the bar fore and aft rather than twist it. And that it's just taking away from the performance of the bar. But anyway, this should be a-okay. We'll see how it works. Anyway, for better or for worse, we have managed to install a 2nd gen rear sway bar on a 3rd gen truck. What'll happen, I don't know. Once we get the thing on the road and start driving around, I'll keep an eye on it and make sure nothing looks like it's binding up or hitting anything. But I don't expect too much trouble. And I'm also going to keep my eyes peeled for a 2nd gen 4x4 sway bar. I'm just going to be a little more astute when I'm out and about looking underneath trucks at the junkyard. And I would like to maybe try and find the rear bar from a 4500 cabin chassis truck. I don't know what that looks like in real life, but it's probably a little more closer to what we need for this truck. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. I'm going to take off now. I want to thank you for tuning in as always. And please, 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 if you have not already, down below, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. Leave a comment. Hit the like button. And most of all, please come back and see us again. And until that time, this is Kevin checking out from the Claremont Classic Garage. So long.